towards the Pacific Ocean, which is just to the left of us, and we have horses on the track. A lot going on this morning, especially compared to yesterday. It was a little slow for horses that were working as well as galloping today. We should have 5 or 6 good works over here on the Del Mar Strip, and we already had one in the books. We had American Pastime put in a move this morning from the barn of Bob Hess. American Pastime slated to run in the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. Here's a look at him now. He did come and back up, and when he first came on, I didn't get to see if he went through the paddock or not because it wasn't part of our vantage point, but he walked in that direction before turning around here to try and break off for this work. American Pastime is coming off a second-place finish in the Gallant Bob last time out at Parks. It was his first try against Graded Stakes Company, and he finished only beaten a half by Colefront, who has been really a really impressive horse on the sprint trail this year. American Pastime here, a son of Tapazar, like I mentioned, for Bob Hess, and owners Mike Mowery and Gary Woods, getting into his work easy here. Obviously very keen to go on. You can see the rider trying to save a little bit of something for him, but American Pastime, especially when you look at his PPs and you see he's not a horse that's forwardly placed, is very aggressive here. Has a little bit of a workmate there to try and catch, and you see he's going to come alongside this horse and eventually go right past. Big, long, reaching stride here from American Pastime as he puts in his final paces for the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. Good morning out here when we have a lot more horses on the grounds as the 34th running of the Breeders' Cup just days away now. And here's our first look locally of Paradise Woods from the barn of Richard Mandela. She'll be competing in the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. Paradise Woods looking very good here, coming off a 5-length score in the Grade 1 Zenyatta, a win and you're in race for the Longines Distaff. And this filly very well thought of earlier on in the year and very disappointing in the Kentucky Oaks. She got extended break after that race, and she came back with a prep race here at Del Mar in the Torrey Pines, and she was the favorite that day. She ran a little disappointing, finishing sixth, and when we spoke to Richard Mandela afterwards, asking her, what did you learn about her in the Kentucky Oaks? And he said she learned some humility. Well, then after the Torrey Pines, she learned a lot more than that. She learned how to rebound, and as you see, she did indeed, winning the Zenyatta really impressively in gate-to-wire fashion, and she seems to be handling the main track here at Del Mar just fine. The Longines Distaff will be her third start off the layoff, one of my favorite angles in the form cycle. Also from the barn of Richard Mandela, who just shipped down to Del Mar yesterday from his Santa Anita base, AVENGE, who will be competing in the Longines Filly in Mar Turf. She's coming off a win in the Grade 1 Win and You're In Rodeo Drive last time out at Santa Anita. But if you are looking for a horse for course, she definitely loves Del Mar. She's had 3 outs over the sod here. 2 of those have been wins. So a horse that knows this turf course very well. As you can see under Janine here, just like Paradise Woods was, and this filly well within herself. Beautifully moving here, calm, cool, and collected for AVENGE in her first spin over the local track. Also stretching her legs earlier on today, Ultima D from the barn of Wesley Ward. He shipped his contingent here a couple of days ago. We saw Lady Aurelia galloping yesterday, and here's our first look on the workout show of Ultima D. Little hard to hold here as she's going to work under the lights, blinkers on for this gallop. She was a winner last time out, breaking her maiden against Stakes Company in her first try at Kentucky Downs over good going. So she did try to break her maiden at Saratoga, sprinting on the turf, and she had to settle for second against El Duce. Now, that was against Colt, and El Duce actually looked pretty good that day, winning. So she came back against Phillies to get her maiden broken. It makes you a little hesitant to love her when you see that she had to go back against fillies when, you know, Wesley has been so successful running girls against boys, and also the fact that she won on good ground instead of firm, because I'm pretty much can guarantee we're going to have firm going here at Del Mar. And then also the fact that it was Kentucky Downs. It's a little bit of a quirky turf course there with the undulation, and this is obviously going to be a whole different ball game for Ultima D. Mind Your Biscuits took his first gallop here at Del Mar. He did jog yesterday, but got a little bit more action today, and he was feeling his oats. We don't have too much of the backup here, but he was pulling on his rider. He was tossing his head and prancing around, really excited to get himself into galloping, and he's going to break off here after attempting a slight stand there. Mind Your Biscuits, the winner of the Dubai Golden Shaheen earlier on in the year. He also won the Belmont Sprint Championship, getting him the win and you're in berth for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This will be the New York bred's second appearance in the Breeders' Cup. He settled for third last year, finishing behind Dre Fong and Masochistic. Trying to keep him nice and controlled here. He is going to get to stretch his legs down the front side, and I'm a big fan of Mind Your Biscuits. I've been looking at him at the barn. He looks primed and ready to go after a dull effort in the Grade 1 4-go last time out for owner-trainer Chad Summers. Here's a look at HEMP HURRAY from the barn of Wesley Ward, getting his first gallop for our show here. He is going to be running in the juvenile turf, and you can see a little full of himself, his rider trying to make him pay attention, switch leads, and he's a little resistant to wanting to behave, but that doesn't seem to affect him on the racetrack. He broke his maiden on debut at Belmont, sprinting on the grass by 4 in gate-to-wire fashion. He came right back to win a stake impressively at Monmouth on the turf as well, winning by over 7 lengths. And then last time out, he settled for second to Untamed Domain in the Summer Stakes up at Woodbine, but it was his first try going a route of ground, And he's been showing a little bit different dimension as far as running style goes. He broke his maiden in gate to wire fashion, and then most recently in that summer stakes he was second and third for the majority of the race. So they're trying to make him a little bit more of a come from behind animal as they stretched out to the route. It didn't work out for the win in the summer, but that doesn't mean going forward that it can't. And as you can see, he seems to be a little bit of an aggressive sort, so that could have been a big learning experience and can really help him moving forward as he is pre-entered in the juvenile turf. Free drop Billy moving out over the Del Mar main strip. Very distinctive here, as you can see, with the big white face and the 4 white wraps. So if you're looking for a horse that you want to be easily recognizable, Free Drop Billy is the one that you want to start cheering for. Trainer Dale Romans and the Albaugh family going to be sending out a pair in the Sentient Jet Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and this horse winner of the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity last time out at Keeneland. His first time trying her out, and he dominated going that 2 turns there. Looking very good, getting over the ground very well here at Del Mar as he prepares for the Sentient Jet Juvenile. I didn't know. Here's a look at Tell Your Mama. You get some fantastic names coming out here for the Breeders' Cup. She'll be entered in the 14 Hands Winery Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Tell Your Mama from the barn of Jeff McCauley. A maiden, actually, going postward. Actually, Bob Hess going to be the trainer of Tell Your Mama. And she looks well within herself here. Nice, easy gallop. You can see a little loop in the reins and nice and loose. Very well behaved. Again, we talked yesterday about watching especially these juveniles as they come around here, how they're taking in the shipping and their surroundings. Tell Your Mama, 2 races under the belt, one at Churchill Downs, a fourth place finish, and then most recently at Keeneland, finishing third. Here's a look at the tabulator, getting a gallop in. We saw him yesterday as well, and I like to see how the horses, once they've shipped in here and gotten a couple of gallops over the track, really settle in. The tabulator looked very professional already yesterday, but he just looks even more so here today for Larry Ravelli. 3 outs, 3 wins as he prepares for the Sentient Jet Breeders' Cup Juvenile, including a score last time out in the Grade 3 Iroquois. His first try routing, also a Breeders' Cup win, and you're in race, so he was guaranteed a starting spot in the gate. You can see he's actually getting a little more aggressive here today than he was yesterday. He was much calmer and quieter. They're taking him out a little bit later in the morning, this morning, and maybe just as the sun is a little higher up in the sky, it gives him a little something to look at. But the tabulator training forwardly here for the Sentient Jet Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Thanks for joining us here on BreedersCup.com as we go through the workouts live from Del Mar Thoroughbred Club, where the 34th running of the Breeders' Cup will take place on November 3rd and 4th. Right now it's time for a renovation break on the track, so we're going to have a quick timeout, but we will be back with all the gallopers and the workouts live here from Del Mar. Just in case you want to make your way out to Del Mar to watch training live, the training hours are between 5:30 and 9:30 in the morning. They do have a 7:15 break, and then track hours on Breeders' Cup days will obviously be abbreviated to accommodate the earlier post times. They have to prepare the track and, of course, all the public areas for racing. So track hours then only 4:45 to 6:45 in the morning. Also, morning schooling goes on in the paddocks here between 5:30 and 9:30, and then a very small window of 10 to 10:30. And if it was anything like summertime, if you are a trainer, you want to get here early and get in line to get in the paddock. The Del Mar paddock here, a very busy place to be in preparation for the races. Also, we see a lot of horses that we've been talking about being pre-entered and in multiple races. The draw for the Breeders' Cup Championship days is going to be on Monday at the barn at the beach they have set up down here in the village of Del Mar. So will be aired live that you can watch the draw for all of the Breeders' Cup World Championship races. As we are waiting for the tractors to finish the renovation break, we'll just take a quick look at the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Horses will be going 7 furlongs here, and included in the lineup, Finley's Lucky Charm. She's been one of the most hard-knocking horses on the year. She's had 5 outs in 2017. 4 of those have been wins and 1 second-place finish. In fact, there's only one time in the filly's life that she's ever finished off the board, and it was a route try. So as long as Brett Calhoun has kept her short, she has delivered. And Brett Calhoun, hearing him talk about Finley, he has just been almost in awe of her, how she is so workmanlike. And he says that's what sets her apart, is how much heart she has. He said he's sure that there are some days that she might not feel 100%, but when she shows up on the racetrack, she does her job and brings her A game every single time. Brett Calhoun is no stranger to the Breeders' Cup. He has a pair of victories, Dubai Majesty and Chamberlain Bridge, in the Filly Mare Sprint and the Turf Sprint, both of those in 2010 coming at Churchill Downs. Since we were talking about Brett Calhoun winning both the Filly Mare Sprint and the Turf Sprint, let's take a look at horses that are pre-entered for this year's Turf Sprint. Of course, one of the big talking points in here is the Lady Aurelia Marcia rematch. Those two have contested each other a couple different times, and they each have 1 tally in their corner. So we'll see who ends up the better of those two. It could be an all-fillies exacta in the Turf Sprint. And I'll tell you what, if you didn't know Lady Aurelia was a filly and you went back to the barn, though, she's a little manly. She doesn't look manly. She's still a delicate filly, but her attitude, she is like, hey, guess what? I'm the boss. When she does everything, when she comes out of the stall, she just zooms out. When she walks around the toe ring, she is just doom, doom, doom. When she gets her hay, she grabs that hay. She is very assertive around the barn. So a real masculine atmosphere for Lady Aurelia, who has such a beautiful name and demeanor. But she's an absolute savage on the racetrack, and that kind of shows back at the barns as well. Here's a live look right now at the current weather status of Del Mar. About 10 minutes ago, it was sun shining, and now the coastal fog has moved in, completely giving us cloud cover. It got about 15 degrees cooler, I'd say, on track, and obviously visibility went down significantly, as you can see from this camera angle. For the horses that are here on site, I feel like in the afternoon, it really doesn't matter because we're most likely not going to be having a heavy fog in the afternoon. And a lot of horses are acclimated well to working out in, dim conditions. They obviously train very early in the mornings. Not every racetrack has lights. So I feel like it's negligible, but it is something worth noting, the temperature difference down here. As horses are getting prepared, and it's been very, very warm down here in the high 90s, and then all of a sudden we drop down to the mid 50s. That's a very vast temperature difference, especially as we're getting into this time of year where a lot of horses are starting to spring their winter coats. So it really could cause a little bit of internal turmoil. Do I grow long hair? Do I not grow long hair? So the horses that are on track here earlier, I feel like at least have an advantage to try and acclimate themselves to the sudden shifts in weather that we see from a racetrack that is situated not 100 yards from the Pacific Ocean. Let's take a look now at the field that has been pre-entered for the Longines Breeders' Cup Turf. Horse is going to be going 1.5 miles here at Del Mar. We talked a little bit yesterday about Beach Patrol being one of the front runners from the U.S. contingent. This has been a race traditionally that the Europeans have run very well in. And we have a couple of Euros in here that have been really knocking heads over across the pond. One of those, Decorated Knight. He's had 8 outs this year. 4 of those have been victories, including the Grade 1 Irish Champion Stakes, as well as the Gold Cup way back in May. But this is a horse that in between those outings has had a couple of, I'd say, unlucky starts under his belt. But I think that he might prefer a little bit firmer footing than he was getting there. Speaking of horses that like firm footing, Highland Reel is another one of those. He did have a foot issue that kept him out of some racing earlier on in the year, and he's a horse that likes to have firmer going, which is why he was able to come here last year and be an impressive winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf over at Santa Anita. This year he did win the Coronation Cup as well as the Prince of Wales, so back-to-back Group 1s for Highland Reel. Part of those numbers that gave Aidan O'Brien 25 Group 1s on the year, and he's coming over with quite the contingent, as he usually does. One thing that's interesting about Highland Reel, I think when people tend to think of European turf horses, they think of a horse that comes from off the pace, that relaxes early and needs to run on late, and Highland Reel is not that horse. He won the Breeders' Cup last year in gate-to-wire fashion, and I feel like he could do something similar here again. He is aggressive early, and he has something late. If you go back and watch some of his wins, he'll be out there pressing or on the front, and when you think, oh, he's got nothing left to give, he just digs deep and finds that additional gear. So he's not only got a very high cruising speed, he's also got some turn of foot at the end, and those two things together can combine to be something absolutely devastating, as we saw last time he stepped foot on American soil. As we wait for the tractors to finish their renovation break here at Del Mar, we're going to look back to our first worker of the morning, American Pastime, who has been entered in the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. Hails from the barn of Bob Hess. Corey Nakatani made the drive down the 5 this morning to work American Pastime. And this horse been ridden by Kent Desormeaux in all of his starts. But Sinaka getting the tab here, and you can see this horse aggressive going into his work. And he's going to not only start off fast, he's going to finish up fast. And I'll tell you what, he stops the watch in a wicked fast time. When we're seeing a lot of horses working in 46, 47, 48, American Pastime here, he's going to click off in 45 and 4. I would say a lot of that's going to come here at the beginning when you can see he is absolutely rolling. You can't even separate where the rail fencing are. He just whizzes right past all the poles. You can see Corey keeping a pretty firm hold on him here as he's going to come up next to his workmate and then move by. I do like how Corey's going to keep him off of the workmate though and not move him down right next to him, because that could really cause him to be too aggressive. After seeing how quick this horse was into stride and how the inside horse can just barely keep up with him, you know why they had that horse start so much farther in front of him, because there's no way he would have been able to stay with him as long as he did here. Big gallop out from American Pastime as well. Thank you guys for joining us here on breederscup.com. You can also follow along Breeders' Cup on Facebook, on Twitter, and watch some of the live feed as well. And there's also a YouTube channel. We've been trying to do our best to get to any questions that might pop up on any of the social media. So I have a couple from this morning. Union Rags on YouTube writes, what is the distance the horses are working? There's no set distance that a horse has to work in preparation. You can kind of choose what you want, but they would generally work, if they're doing it week of, a 3 furlong blowout would be something familiar that you would see. Most of these horses will be working either a half mile, which is 4 furlongs, or 5 furlongs, which is 5/8 of a mile. Furlong, obviously, 1/8 of a mile. Very few horses, I'd say, would be working anything over 5 furlongs this close to the race. We did see a couple of 6 and 7 furlong works the last, 2 weeks or so, but that's the majority of that longer distance preparation has already been done in the book. So what we're seeing now is we want to see horses getting just a little bit sharper as they get closer to race time. So a lot of, again, those half mile works will be what we're going to be seeing here. Also on Facebook, we have a question. Who's my favorite horse for the Classic? Well, favorite or who I think is going to win, because I really feel like those could be different questions. You always want to see a good horse do well, so it would be a great ending to Arrogate's story as he's going to head off to stud after this, to be able to finish off his career as amazingly as he started it, and how we've kind of come to know him. It would be nice to see him kind of buck this whole I don't like Del Mar Trend. I wouldn't be sad to see Churchill win, even though I don't think his pedigree really lends himself to the dirt. You know, Aiden O'Brien and the Tabers and Magnar have been trying to win this race for so long, and they have gotten so close. So for Churchill to be able to finally get it done would just be amazing. Diversify, you know, a New York bred to win the Classic would be really fun, and I like his forward running style. And Gunrunner, just watching a horse that has been around, and you know, in the days now where we see horses with a little less starts, he's had 17 races under his belt. You know, we've been watching him for 3 years racing already, and he's just got a great kind of blue collar, I would say, story behind him. So Gunrunner, who has just gotten better and better with age, for Steve Asmussen and Winchell Thoroughbreds and Three Chimneys, wouldn't mind to see him win this race either. Here's a good look right now at MOPOTISM and PAVEL, both from the barn of Doug O'Neill, and both slated to work this morning here at Del Mar. You can see with the little bit of a colder air that's moved in, some of these horses feeling their oats, as we like to say. Pavel's there on the left with the yellow saddle towel, and MOPOTISM in the purple one on the right or in the front of your screen now. We did talk a little bit yesterday about how saddle towels will be given out, so it is good to see them being utilized now. This has been a fantastic thing from the Breeders' Cup where these horses get these saddle towels and they are all given numbers, and you can check out breederscup.com and you can print out or you can use on your mobile device what every horse's number is. They are also color coded at the bottom. So you saw MOPOTISM, she's in the distaff, so she has that yellow bar at the bottom. And then the Breeders' Cup Classic horses are all pure yellow saddle towels. So it's something to be able to identify the horses if maybe you aren't familiar with what the horse itself looks like or what the barn saddle towels look like. Plus, it really helps us here as the fog is rolling in and we can barely see some of these horses. At least their saddle towels stand up brightly. Right now you're looking on the screen at Pavel, who will be entered in the Breeders' Cup Classic from Doug O'Neill. And again, both these horses slated to work, so we will catch these works live here. Thanks for joining us and watching along with us on BreedersCup.com. Going to switch over from Pavel now as he continues to back up to prepare for his work. Here's a quick look at Blonde Bomber from the barn of Stanley Gold. She's slated to work this morning as well. We talked pretty in depth yesterday, I would say, about Blonde Bomber. And you can see her standing, and then she's going to move off here, going to back up slightly. Lots of traffic right now on the track right after the break when the racetrack itself has been groomed. Everyone wants to get out over this excellent footing that is going on. I just saw War Flag gallop past me, Catholic Boy currently on the backup. So we should have lots of action coming up for you very quickly here as we watch these horses. Blonde Bomber, she's going to be still going backwards here, so we're going to switch back over to Pavel, who looks to be ready to break off along with MOPOTISM here. That's Pavel in the yellow saddle towel, which you can see, and then MOPOTISM on the inside with the 205. So these two maybe going to be working in company for Doug O'Neill. After a lengthy backup and jog, it looks like MOPOTISM and Pavel finally going to be getting into a work here. Sometimes it does take a while. We got to make sure these horses get nice and warmed up, especially with the weather a little bit cooler. You definitely want to make sure their muscles are warm and the horses are feeling good and ready to put in a good work effort. So this is a pair from the barn of Doug O'Neill, MOPOTISM on the inside and Pavel on the outside. MOPOTISM for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff and Pavel for the Breeders' Cup Classic, a 3-year-old who will be competing against older horses. You can see MOPOTISM was extremely anxious to get going, and her rider had to check her a couple times because it seems like they want to keep this pair together at least for the beginning stages of this work, and we'll see how they finish up. Now Pavel going to be moving alongside, and he's just a little bit rank there on the outside. It seems to be the riders are pretty happy to let MOPOTISM just kind of be right in front of Pavel. And when you look at her running line, she's a horse that likes to come from off of it. So kind of an interesting workout here Now she's opened up a little bit, and as she has gotten away from Pavel, she has really relaxed. She just didn't like to have him right on the side of her. You know, sometimes when these horses are obviously trained to race and run away from, when you have all that pressure from a horse right next to you, it makes them a little bit harder to handle. So nice to see that she was able to pretty much switch off as they moved Pavel off of her flank. These horses are going to hit the top of the stretch almost together, and they're pretty decently far off of not only the fence but of each other. So I would say, while it's a company work, I don't necessarily think that they are supposed to be down and out fighting each other. Pavel here still right off the side of MOPOTISM, and is not going to catch her as they pass the wire, but here you'll see his rider move him a little bit more towards the filly, and he wants a big gallop out for Pavel, who have to be going 1.25 miles for just the second time in his career. Good finish out on the bottom turn here, and we've seen this from a couple of different trainers that really want them to work instead of down the stretch but past the wire and then around the turn again. So here is where Pavel's going to get the bulk of his work, as he is asked a little bit to move alongside the filly stablemate and then try to pass her a little bit, and then he eases up pretty nicely, and they're going to finish on even terms here. That's Pavel and MOPOTISM from the barn of Doug O'Neill putting in their final preparations for the Breeders' Cup Classic and the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. Our apologies for the fog. Obviously, it's not always easy to see the horses as they run through, but the Blonde Bomber is working. And here's a look at her right now. She kind of matches the weather here today, if you're looking for your hunch play to follow along. Blonde Bomber, daughter of Fort Larned for Stanley Gold and Arundel Farms. And you can see here she was yesterday when she galloped, she was a good but a little bit naughty, had to be kept to task, and here she is excited to get into her work, but you can see her ears were flicking back and forth as she was listening to what her rider wanted. Lost her just a little bit in the fog as she is putting in her final move before the 14 Hands Winery Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. As we'll catch, that's not her. And here she is coming out of the fog down the stretch to finish up her work. You can see her ears are back, so she's definitely into her work. She has a really big stride for a filly who doesn't appear to be on the large side. I haven't gotten up close and personal with her, but she seems to cover a substantial amount of ground for as small as she appears. And another horse, big gallop out here for her. And the gallop out is what we refer to the working or the galloping after the wire, which we would assume would be the natural finish place as they come around that bottom turn again. And that was the Blonde Bomber working for the 14 Hands Winery Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Here's a look at Sharp Azteca. We saw him yesterday, and he was very aggressive yesterday to get himself going. But today he looks to be a lot more complacent to obey what his exercise rider is asking from him. He's jogging the wrong way, or is she? I'm sorry. She's jogging. I can't tell if he's the wrong way or the right way because I don't know where he is on the track. Just on my screen. Looks like he's backing up here the wrong way. And you can see those ears straight as they can be, looking forward. And horses will be paying a lot more attention now as the fog has set in, so they can, you know, not be surprised by anything that might just suddenly appear. As thick as it is for us, it's a little bit thinner when you're actually on the track. But I'd say anything like for right now, where I'm sitting at my vantage point at the top of the stretch, I really can't see all the way onto the backside due to the fog that has rolled in here off of the Pacific Ocean. Sharp Azteca for Jorge Navarro, a winner of his last 2 outs, including the Monmouth Cup by 7 lengths, and then the Kelso most recently, as he prepares for the Las Vegas Dirt Mile. Very good race here that the Breeders' Cup thought to come out with the Dirt Mile. Touched on it a little bit yesterday about how it really fills a niche between these horses that are sprinters and the horses that can go the classic distance of the 1.25 miles. Had a Facebook question about the physicality differences between a horse that it might be a sprinter and might be a miler. I'd say typically you would see a sprinter is a little bit more compact, a little bit more short in the back, a very large butt, and a nice round shoulder. You really want to see them able to hit the ground, obviously, rapidly because they're going shorter. I feel like the dirt mile horses have a little bit more scope to them, so they could be a little bit taller, a little bit rangier. You know, even though Mind Your Biscuits is more of a sprinter, he gets that 7 furlong distance. I feel like he would make a really good miler, and he's a little bit built more towards that type than just your rock hard sprinter. I would say Sharp Azteca here looks more like a traditional sprinter with that shorter neck and that shorter, rounder butt. So physically, you want to look for them to look more like a little rocket ship than a long, lean animal. And there's Sharp Azteca kind of disappearing into the fog here as he prepares for the Las Vegas Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Good thing that he has a saddle towel on, because while we can't see the horse, we can definitely see the saddle towel. And you can kind of gauge how fast he's going. Maybe not the manner that he's doing it in. We can't tell necessarily from this view if he is rank or if he is nice and calm and quiet, but at least we can see the clip that he's doing it. His gallop boy keeping him really far off the fence here as he passes down the stretch. And there was a horse in front of him, actually. Hollywood Star is in front of Sharp Azteca, and that is one of the reasons why that his rider is trying to keep him so far off, because he was extremely aggressive trying to get by that horse. And you saw he lost his second pad there just coming out the back, but no harm. Just, you see some of these horses that get very aggressive in training, and it takes a strong hand to hold on to them and keep them going. What you don't want a horse that's, you know, less than a week out from a race to do too much. And Sharp Azteca, he's obviously on point right now. This horse is, we would almost say on tilt. You can see the whole time his rider's pulling on him, his mouth is open. He wants to do a lot more than his rider wants him to do, but that is really, you know, where the finesse in training comes in, because you want to be able to have a horse that is ready to peak on a certain day, and you have to be careful not to have them peak before. You know, there's been some horses that we've seen put in these lightning fast workouts, and then they're just a little dull or a little flat come race day. So a very fine line between getting a horse to be at their peak and then not over it. Let's take a look again at Sharp Azteca as he came down the stretch. Again, started to get a little bit aggressive because he saw Hollywood Star right in front of him and he wanted to catch him. That is what he's been taught to do as a racehorse, is catch other horses and pass them. And right there as his saddle pad and additional saddle towel came out, he just breezed on by. Nice job there by the rider, though, to do what he could. He kept him as far away. He was as close to the outside rail, really, as he could be, as Sharp Azteca really zeroed in on Hollywood Star. And that's why a lot of times you'll see horses work solo, because you don't want them to have that kind of aggressiveness. And that's a reason why they work in company. If you have a horse that you need to work a little bit harder, because it really does give them that more of a race type simulation where they're thinking, this is my job. I'm a racehorse. I'm going to catch that horse and finish in front. So Sharp Azteca, if nothing, competitive as all get out here as he prepares for the Las Vegas Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Let's take a look now at Hollywood Star as we pan out. He seems no worse for wear. I don't even know if he really noticed that there was a horse that was trying to pass him on the outside. And part of that comes from just the fact that he hasn't had all the races that Sharp Azteca has. Some of these older horses, you know, that's their job. They go out there and they race. Some of these younger horses, they've only raced 2 or 3 times. And you'll hear trainers say, oh, he's still learning, or he's green, or, you know, it really took us a while to get into it. And that's a really good example. So Sharp Azteca there on the outside, he knows I have to catch horses and pass them. Hollywood Star there on the inside, he didn't really seem bothered that horse was galloping by. He was very professional, especially when the saddle towel and pad came out from behind. I mean, Hollywood Star, he's equipped with blinkers, so he most likely didn't see, but didn't react at all. So really well demeanored here, and that could do well for him. Do well for him on Breeders' Cup Day. There's Sharp Azteca's cleaning crew, Chad Summers, trainer of Mind Your Biscuits, and he went to go pick up the tack. He's going to have to talk about now why he didn't tighten that girth before sending that horse out. Here's a look real quick at P.D. Bianchi for Doug O'Neill as she's getting ready to work here, very on her toes as she was backing up right in front of us. She was putting her head down, giving a couple of little baby bucks to her gallop boy, and really excited to get started and get moving the right way on the track. She was ready to turn around and go, because to her that meant that she got to go a lot faster than they were just letting her go jogging the wrong way. She'll pick up a intended workmate here, but not a Breeders' Cup horse, so I'm not sure who her workmate is. And as you can see, she wasn't too keen to have that horse over by her. Some horses just don't like to be in close quarters. P.D. Bianchi is going to be getting ready for the juvenile fillies. She did break her maiden right here at Del Mar, sprinting 5 furlongs. And then she has run second in the Grade 1 Del Mar Debutante, going 7 furlongs to Moonshine Memories, and most recently third in the Chandelier. So as the distances are getting longer, she is not finishing up as strongly. So possibly after the Breeders' Cup, if she doesn't seem to want the route, they'll be able to cut her back. But it could be just the fact that she's a horse that needs some more racing. She ran a very good second in that Del Mar Debutante. She was only beaten a half a length to Moonshine Memories, who of course just increased that winning distance when she won the Grade 1 Chandelier over at Santa Anita in their first try routing. Second try routing should be, you know, much better. A lot of these horses race themselves into fitness, and it's a lot to ask of these young horses to go so far when all they've done is go short. Even in the mornings, you're not seeing these horses work a mile or a mile and a 16th. They're working these, you know, half miles, these 5 furlong works, and then all of a sudden they're racing, you know, more than twice that distance. P.D. Bianchi here still just, it's like she didn't want the horse on her inside, but now she definitely wants to be next to her workmate. So a little quirky, very green. You know, what a compare and contrast here to Hollywood Star, who was out there by himself and didn't turn a hair even when Sharp Azteca put the daggers into him. And here instead we see Petey Bianchi, who almost can't seem to decide if she wants to be happy or not happy. And her workmate, I don't know, they might not be friends in the barn. They seem really ready to get after each other. We'll see if she settles down and focuses on business as they are slated to break off here for Petey Bianchi's final work before the 14 Hands Winery Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Here's a look at Petey Bianchi finishing up her paces here. And at first it looked like her workmate was going to be able to keep pace with her. And then as they came down the stretch, Petey Bianchi really outclassing the workmate. You saw the rider on the workmate drop his whip mid-stretch, but he was still trying to get busy on him and just give Petey Bianchi something else to kind of repel. When you're working these horses, you want to have a lot of different things thrown at them that they might come across during the races. So when you see that and you see a horse that she's able to pass, try and come back, that kind of can lead you to see if they have any grit or determination, if they're able to come back by. And there her rider's just keeping a nice firm hold on her to finish up. And as you saw her workmate go on past, I'll be interested to see from Doug O'Neill if that was the intended type of work that he wanted. These two were kind of going at it early on and just not paying as close attention in the warm-up. But she did finish off, worked nicely. She leveled off at the end, and she was very in hand to finish out the work here as she prepares for the 14 Hands Winery Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Here's a look at Mongolian Saturday. We saw him out here yesterday, and he was the consummate example of a professional racehorse. He came out yesterday, went right past the haunted house and the spook fest. I think that his exercise rider right now is really more interested than his surroundings than Mongolian Saturday is. You can see him standing here quietly on a loose rein. This is just great to see from these old veteran racehorses. He's a 7-year-old with 44 career starts under his belt. I don't even think I can count the number of racetracks that he's been to. So he's just pretty much checking racetracks off his list. It'll be his first try here at Del Mar as he competes in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. He is a defending Turf Sprint winner. He did win the Breeders' Cup back in 2015 when it was held at Keeneland, going 5.5 furlongs. It'll be contested at 5 furlongs here at Del Mar. Mongolian Saturday is slated to work today, so we will keep an eye on him, but he could stand here for the next 10 minutes, it looks like. His rider not worried about him doing anything wrong at all. And you got to love a horse with a good mind like this. What a fantastic example of what a racehorse can do. As we wait for Mongolian Saturday, let's take a look quickly at the field. Again, 5 furlongs, $1 million on the line. We've talked about the fillies in here, but there are some quick colts as well. Buchero for Tim Gleishaw. He brings in back-to-back wins, and I was actually able to talk to his owners, Iron Horse Racing Stables, about this horse. And if you take a look, he had those back-to-back wins in the Woodford and the Brickyard. Before that, the last time that he tried to sprint on the turf, it was not a great experience. He ran 11th, beaten 14 lengths, but he had an excuse that day, and he just didn't get a chance between that race and the Woodford to sprint on the turf. And his owners say that is really what he wants to do. Harlan said that Buchero is a horse that really could be just that 5 furlong turf distance specialist, and they had all these great plans for him. You see, he's an Indiana bred, which you don't probably see a lot of Indiana breds in the Breeders' Cup, but they have a very strong state bred program, and so you get a horse like Buchero to be able to come from these state bred races and then excel on the world stage of the Breeders' Cup World Championships. And fun little story about his name. He is Bicantharos, which is a Roman type of pottery, and Buchero is an Italian type of pottery. You learn all kinds of great things here on BreedersCup.com, the workout show. Mongolian Saturday now on the move here for his work. And again, you see just how easy he takes it with horses coming up on the inside, a lot of action on over the fence, and just goes out here and does his job. And we'll keep our eye on him so we can see when he decides to break off to get ready to work and put in his final preparation. Mongolian Saturday here in the body of his work, and not easy to handle. Again, we talked about the weather here and how it has significantly cooled down. And when there is a crispness in the air, it really makes some of these horses feel good. I'm glad to see him settling down now as he gets down the stretch. Really covering ground well for a turf horse that's running on dirt. Someone asked earlier about the difference between the physicalities of a mile horse and like a sprinter. Mongolian Saturday is a really good example of a sprinter. He's got a compact back. He's got just that little round butt for pushing, and you can see how quick his stride is. 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. Just very fast that his legs go, back and forth together. And that's what you see on these horses that are running these shorter distances. And you'd like to see that after a brisk work like that with the extended warm-up, and, for an old veteran like him to be able to, pass the wire and gallop out and then still want to go on and not want to pull up, that's a horse that's feeling very good. Mongolian Saturday putting in a nice final preparation for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And Mongolian Saturday finishing his paces, but here is Elate out here on track for the first time. The Bilmont contingent just arriving in Southern California yesterday, and she has really burst on the scene as of late. Just a 3-year-old filly here, and they didn't make it to the Kentucky Oaks with her, but since then she has pretty much just cleaned up in the 3-year-old filly division. She finished second in the CCA Oaks to Abel Tasman, who was your Kentucky Oaks winner, and then she strung together back-to-back dominating victories in the Grade 1 Alabama, and then last time out in the Grade 1 Beldame against older mares, and she won by over 8 lengths. So she has shown that she is absolutely worth 1, 2, 3 looks in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, as she will take on older females again, moving beautifully here as she comes up with her 4 white wraps. And this is what I like to see. So this filly came out, she was paying attention, she was throwing her legs out with excellent energy, and then the minute her rider said go, she right into the canter here and picking up her leads just as she should. This is a filly that you would not know is only 3 years old with 9 races under her belt. She is moving out here like a veteran, and well in hand here, covering the ground just beautifully. You can see she just almost floats on top of it. She doesn't hit the ground really heavy. Her legs just kind of touch, and then she's able to move herself forward. Beautiful mover here late. This is my first view of her live, so I'm really double thumbs up for this Belmont trainee who brings in 4 wins under her belt. The Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff will anchor the Friday program here, and Elate on your screen will be taking on Elders for the second time. What a fantastic gallop here for her first time out over the Del Mar surface. Beautifully jogging on and off, and her whole gallop here, really, there's a group of us standing at the top of the stretch watching, pretty much just left us all in awe. Here's the field that she will line up against in the Longines Distaff. Included in here, Stellar Wind, who will be making her third appearance in this race. MOPOTISM, who we saw work earlier for Team O'Neill. A couple other win-in horses, Forever Unbridled, who was third to Beholder and Songbird in last year's rendition. Paradise Woods and Romantic Vision, who won the Grade 1 Zenyatta and the Grade 1 Spinster, respectively, to get win-in berths. You'll see on here, It 'Tis Well is still listed, but It 'Tis Well will not be going postward in the Breeders' Cup. According to Jerry Hollendorfer, she has been withdrawn. He says she's a little tender on her foot out of her last work, so they decided to not run her in this race, and she was the winner of the Grade 1 Cotillion, where she defeated Abel Tasman, your Kentucky Oaks winner. So she will definitely be a name that will be missed out of this field, but always horses' well-being is what we are focused on at all times. So I'm sure she's going to be just fine. A hoof injury is nothing that is career. There's no point in lining up in one of the toughest races on the year if you can't bring your top game. And there's a look at Elate as she exits the track here for Belmont. Speaking of Abel Tasman, in addition to the Kentucky Oaks, she also won the Grade 1 Acorn, and she defeated Elate here in the CCA Oaks. That was going the mile and an eighth distance that they will be covering in the Longines Distaff. But then we mentioned that she was beaten in the Cotillion. She did not break that day. And then during the race, she was just a little rank. She was trying to run off with Mike Smith. She did not want to listen to what he was telling her to do during the race. But since then, Bob Baffert has said, let's try and fix her, and they have worked her out of the gate on at least one occasion. She, in fact, worked a 7-furlong move back on October 22nd, so last week out of the gate, and after him and Mike Smith were very pleased that she came out of the gate, and while I thought she still looked a hair out of Mike's hand coming down the backside from that work, they said that she was paying attention much better. So, you know, a stark difference to what we see here from Elate, who was more than happy to do everything asked of her in this first gallop over the Del Mar main track. Thank you again for joining us here on BreedersCup.com as we are live on the grounds of the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club, where the Breeders' Cup World Championships will be held Friday and Saturday, November 3rd and 4th, as we are watching for the horses that are galloping and working we are also taking questions from social media. So we'll get to a couple of these as we can, as we take a look at some of the earlier works from this morning, including MOPOTISM and PAVEL here. First question was, what is a blowout? A blowout is generally a 3 furlong move, and it is just a very quick spurt. It's just down the stretch. It might be a full out work. It might just be a little bit faster than, say, a 2-minute lick. We do it to get a little bit of wind into the horse, and it's generally done a couple of days before the race. While a normal workout schedule might be every 6 days or every 7 days, and then, about a week out from the race day, a blowout would be, say, like on Wednesday before their Saturday race. It's a little old school training technique that we used to see a lot more often. Several trainers come to mind off the top of your head that used to do it, that we don't see it as frequently now, because now I think that the trainers are more geared towards freshness. They like to bring a horse ready to fire fresh, and some think that, blowing them out a couple days before it might take that edge off. But on the other hand, if you have a horse that's very aggressive, the 3 furlong blowout can really help them just release some of that energy to make them more focused on race day. And we'll see a couple horses that are slated to have some blowouts here at Del Mar before the big weekend. People on YouTube asking about the work schedule and how soon to a race does a horse typically work. So we just kind of went over that. A lot of trainers have their schedule, say every 6 or 7 days, they put in a work, and then, final paces about a week before a race. And, there's no set in stone way. Some people like to work them more frequently. Some people don't like to work them at all. In between works, horses will generally either jog or just gallop on the track. We also have something called a 2-minute lick, which is just faster than a gallop. You can use it to get a little bit of air into your horse to put some bottom on them. And if they aren't on the track, they could just be in the shed row, either tack walking, where they have a rider and tack on, but they don't leave the shed row, or just walking with nothing, with their hot walker just around the toe ring or on the walking machine. And for some horses, they come out here and they get ponied, so they'll have no weight on their backs, but they'll still be able to get the fitness and the exercise that they need by going alongside a pony horse. And that's also good for horses that are maybe a little quirky, like they don't like their mouth touched, or they train too hard when they have a rider. They can come out and be a lot more relaxed when they're in a pony horse situation. Colt LFC asks, is the transition from turf to dirt more tough for horses compared to going dirt to turf? Oh, I think it just kind of depends. I think that maybe turf to dirt is hard because you get a significant amount of kickback if you're coming from behind. For the most part, the kickback on a turf course is minimal. There's obviously exceptions, right? When the big clods of mud are coming, or when there's been a softer turf course and the divots are coming up, but it's still different. It's grass and mud that's all kind of combined. When you're on the dirt and you're in the back, there's that stinging dirt that's being just flung at you. So that's really hard for a lot of horses to overcome the first time, especially if they've raced exclusively on the other surface. Also, just the pace and tempo of a race is different. And the turns, because the majority of racetracks here in North America, with the exception of Woodbine, have the interior turf courses. The turns themselves are banked tighter, and the turn itself is a lot more, here we're turning left, rather than, okay, we're turning left. So that is something that horses have to acclimate for, because obviously as they are coming around these turns at full speed, you have a horse kind of leaning into the turn, you have the rider on. So to just make all these transitions, it might not seem like a big deal if you just had one, but when you have all of these things going on, that's kind of what makes it difficult. And I don't know necessarily which would be tougher, except for the kickback situation could be just a little bit harder to, you can't explain to the horse, by the way, when you run right now, dirt's going to come back in your face. So that's the one thing I would say is harder for horses to overcome when they switch surfaces. Imperial Hint on track here at Del Mar. Another horse that really embodies what a sprinter should look like. You can see his nice roundness that he just kind of has everywhere, through his neck, through his back end, through his girth and his belly. He is a quintessential sprinter body type, as he will be lining up in the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. He's been favored in 4 of his last 5 outings, and he's been a winner of his last 5 outings, stretching back to December of 2016. So he has a perfect 4 for 4 this year. He's never faced Grade 1 company, and it should be interesting to see how he stacks up to horses with the likes of Dre Fong and Ransom the Moon and Roy H. I mean, very, very quick animals. He's always been able to kind of just dominate his races, but I've seen things from him, like in the Smile, where he had to lay off, that show that he is able to be rated. And when you're talking about 10 horses that are just going to go out guns a-blazing, you have that one horse that can turn it off and wait. When they all come down to the end, you might have a little bit extra than some of those who were gunning it from the get-go have. Really nice mover here. As you can see, his back legs step up way underneath his belly. And when he's able to do that, that really is able to propel him forward than a horse that's kind of stepping just behind himself. He's almost putting his back feet directly into where his front feet are. So perfect little jogging stride here. And again, good view of where you can get that sprinter body type on Imperial Hint as he tucks his head. Very professional here for his first trip to Del Mar, preparing for the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. Here's a look at Encumbered here for Simon Callahan, who also will send out Moonshine Memories in the 14 Hands Winery juvenile fillies, and Encumbered going to be pointed towards the juvenile turf here. He has 2 wins on the grass, both of them at the mile distance, both of them right here at Del Mar, so that bodes very well for anyone looking for a horse for course. Encumbered was 4th on debut to run away his stablemate in the Santa Anita Juvenile, but that was on the dirt. And then most recently, he was well beaten in the front runner. But again, that was on the dirt. So I think Simon has come to the realization that this horse not going to be a dirt performer, and let's just keep him where he's good, and that is on the turf course, especially the turf course right here at Del Mar. He's just going to go out for a nice easy gallop here today. You see the nice long reins, and he's a horse that's moving like a grass horse, changing leads right there as requested. So pretty professional for Simon Callahan. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to get Moonshine Memories on this show, but she looked really good galloping this morning. She goes out just before this show starts generally, so right around 6:30, and I've been able to catch her just sitting here, but it'd be nice if they would just wait until our show started so we could show her as well. And here's Encumbered coming around for a second time, so going to have plenty of stamina for his mile contest in the juvenile turf here. You can see he's equipped with a rubber figure 8, but just going nice and easy for his rider. No trying to run off, no naughtiness, no unprofessionalism. This is a very well-behaved 2-year-old. There's Encumbered after that nice, long, easy gallop here. Carlos, longtime assistant to Simon Callahan, aside on the pony. And this horse just going to stand and be very patient. I guess that bodes very well for a turf horse to be patient on occasion. And this horse has just shown that he is a consummate professional out on the racetrack, as he has not done anything wrong. We have seen a couple horses come out here with some naughty intentions, and I feel like Encumbered, not one of those horses. He comes out here and does his job. He is the good kid that will get the gold star for the day. They're going to bring Encumbered back here to the starting gates, which are set at the top of the stretch in the chute for a little bit of gate schooling. And you might think, why, when a horse is already run, would they stand in the gate? This is an excellent thing for horses to do for a number of reasons. First thing is, if a horse maybe gets a little nervous in the gate, you can bring them here in the morning and school them so they can be relaxed. They can stand in here, and you can really just leave them in here for 10 minutes if you want to, and eventually they will breathe, put their head down, have a pet, and really relax. And that can help them on race day, because when they're so keyed up, if they get nervous, that can cause them to false fire or to break through the gate or just to not leave well. So you need a horse that's going to be going into the starting gate and standing and waiting and just leaving as soon as the gate opens. You don't want them to try and leave before. You don't want them to toss their head. And I think it can be especially helpful when you are going into a race that you know is going to have a full field, because that's a lot more horses to load. And even if they use the 2-horse method, that's still several minutes that some of these horses could be standing in the starting gate. And then, of course, if any horse acts up, that's even longer. So if any of these situations arrive, you want to make sure your horse is well schooled and is comfortable. You can see here this horse not having any issues. His feet have been firmly planted on the ground. And while he's looking around slightly at what's going on, he is pretty much bird-dogged down the track. And that is really good. This horse has been broke well. He seems to have a really good mind, and he's very comfortable in the starting gate. Personally, we stand our horses all the time. Every time they are going to race, they stand. You'll see trainers also take them to the paddock to school, and even horses that are older that have done this a number of times, they will school them in the gates. They will school them in the paddock, because horses are creatures of repetition, and the more you do something, the happier and more comfortable they are. They're going to opt to bring this horse out the front. You can also back them out. And you see the assistant starter just stood up there with his hand because he wanted Encumbered to walk out of the starting gate and not leap out, which is, what they do during racing. They break quickly. So he just put his hand up there to tell him, nice and easy, bub. And Encumbered making his way right past us. He's looking at me and I'm waving at him. Really great training session and schooling session today for the Simon Callahan trainee, who will be entered in the juvenile turf. Here's a look at Lady Aurelia from the barn of Wesley Ward. Longtime assistant Blake Heap alongside there on the pony. And Lady Aurelia just standing nice and quietly the track has really calmed down. It was pretty busy earlier with a whole flood of Breeders' Cup horses out galloping and working, but now she pretty much has the entire grounds to herself, so she'll be able to take as much time here as she likes. She's just standing beautifully. You can see the rider is very relaxed. He's got his hands down. He's not too concerned with her. So as aggressive as she can be at race time or at feed time on the track here, she's being an absolute lady as she will line up in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint coming up on November 3rd and 4th here at Del Mar. As Lady Aurelia taking her time here just to enjoy the briskness of the morning at Del Mar, we will take a quick peek at the field for the mile. This one will be on the turf course, so we have the dirt mile and the turf mile, which we just referred to as the mile. World Approval, I would say, is your likely favorite in this race, and good news is that Ribchester, who was pre-entered in here, has been given the green light to attend Breeders' Cup. This is a horse that will be retired after the Breeders' Cup, and his conditioner, Richard Fahey, said that he had a routine gallop yesterday and that they liked it, so they're going to go ahead and bring him on down. It's awesome because he ran just 2 weeks ago in Ascot in the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. He finished second that day to Persuasive as the favorite, but he got soft ground, and possibly he can improve as he gets back on firm turf over here. William Buick will be aboard, as he has been for the majority of his recent starts. And his conditioner, Richard Fahey, said he's not concerned about the gap between races. He says he's kept his coat, he looks good, and clearly he wants to go. So he says we're going to put him on the plane to California. So good to hear a couple of these horses coming from Europe that are pre-entered are question marks, and it is nice to know when they are going to be heading on over. And for a horse like Ribchester, who has won a couple of Group 1s this year, he took the Locken Stakes as well as the Queen Anne Stakes, very prestigious events over there. And in the Queen Anne, he beat Deauville, who came over here and was the favorite in the Arlington Million, ended up being beaten by Beach Patrol, but a horse that has, run well on U.S. soil before. And the fact that he's able to handle that horse means that he, if he likes the firm going, which I think he should, would be a force to be reckoned with too. So interesting field lining up there for the mile. My personal favorite Breeders' Cup race. Here's our first look at Curlin's Approval. She has been entered in the filly and mare sprint. They'll be going 7 furlongs, and she is a Breeders' Cup win and your in horse. She's coming off a 4-length score in the barely even last time out at Gulfstream Park, going that 7 furlongs. A couple starts back, she did take the Grade 2 Princess Rooney, laying right off the pace. In between that, she did try Grade 1 Company. She ran in the Grade 1 Ballerina and settled for 6th that day, behind By the Moon, Highway Star, Corina Mia. So some, very fast fillies. By the Moon will also line up against her again here in the filly and mare sprint. The one thing she does have is at least one more recent race under her belt. And that could work in her favor because it seems like she's a horse that, needs a race or so after a break to get going. So I like the fact that she's had a really recent out. So it'll be the first time we've gotten to see this Happy Altar trainee. Meanwhile, Lady Aurelia, who spent a good 10 minutes or so standing here at the gap, has started her gallop. She did gallop here yesterday on the main track as well. Turf course will actually be open for gallops next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 7:15 to 7:45 and also at 9:30. And then Friday, Breeders' Cup horses only at 6:45 in the morning. So that's why we have all these horses on the main track here, as the turf course not yet opened for turf gallops or turf workers. And once they do, you will see, especially a lot of the Europeans like to come out here and stretch their legs over the turf course. They'll most likely set the dogs up. So the little orange cones that serve as a barrier for the horses to keep them off of the rail or the more inside paths of the turf course where races are run. They try to keep the horses that are galloping or working towards the outside on the lesser used part of the turf course to maintain the integrity of the track. Lady Aurelia a lot more forward today in this gallop. Yesterday they kind of just left her to do everything on her own. And today she looks a little quicker as they've moved her down to about the 2 or 3 path right there off the rail. And then they're going to move her kind of back out on the turn. And she looks good being asked to gallop here at a pretty decent clip. Here's a look at the field that will be assembled for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. We've just been watching Curlin's Approval, taking her first spin here at Del Mar. And one of the horses that's been all the buzz is Unique Bella. She's only tasted defeat one time in her 6-race career, and she was sidelined due to a shin back in March of this year, but came off the bench successfully to win the Grade 3 LA Woman last time out. That was against older horses as well. A lot to take in for this daughter of Tappan. Jerry Hollendorfer, of course, had Songbird in his barn until she was retired earlier, and Unique Bella fitting into those shoes very nicely. She also put in her paces this morning at Santa Anita, working 5 furlongs in a blistering fast 59 and change. We've been watching her work half miles most recently, getting ready for the Filly and Mare Sprint, but it was nice to see her put in this 5 furlong move, and she looked good as usual. She's an absolute beast to watch train, and I can't wait to see her down here and how she's going to get over the surface. And she's 6 times the size of probably any other horse in this field. She is a big horse, very colty, and she has all the makings of a star. But there are horses in here with more experience. There are older horses in here. Horses like By the Moon, who's 5 and is not, I would say she doesn't win all the time, but she's really consistent. 19 out, 7 wins, 6 seconds. So she's always right there. Finley's Lucky Charm, like Brett Calhoun says, she brings her A game every single time. And Unique Bella, second start off the layoff. She's really going to have to keep it together here. Plus, she's going to have to go 7 furlongs. We haven't seen her do that since the Santa Ynez back in January of this year at Santa Anita. I don't think it's going to be an issue because she's routed successfully before. She just kind of seems to do anything you ask. But she didn't break great in the LA Woman, and for the first time, she really didn't find herself in a position where she could be on the lead if she wanted, and that worked okay for her in the LA Woman, but she really outclassed that field there, and she won by 3, but it wasn't, I think, as visually impressive as a race as we kind of hoped for on paper from her, so she still needs to step up her game. As good as she is in the morning, she's kind of put it all together in the afternoon, and the Breeders' Cup is a tough spot to have to do that in. As we are starting to wind down training out here at Del Mar, where the surf meets the turf, we're going to look back on one of the quickest workouts of the morning, and that was American Pastime from the barn of Bob Hess, who is entered in the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. He was second in the Gallant Bob last time out, and likes Del Mar. He's got a win over the local strip here, as he won just an allowance race in August before heading to Parks for that Gallant Bob. And he also likes the 6 furlong distance. He has 3 wins of 4 outs at the distance. He could be a little bit of a sleeper horse here if you're looking for someone under the radar. And judging by the time of this work, he really likes the main track at Del Mar. Aggressive here under Corey Nakatani to get going. And you'll see he'll pick up a workmate. And there's no way this workmate would have been able to stay with him for the majority of the work. So they have this horse way out in front, giving American Pastime a target. And you'll see he's going to come right to him. And then the workmate is going to try and be hustled along there to keep pace with American Pastime. And it was a good thing that that horse jumped in at the quarter pole when he did, because this American Pastime is just going to breeze right on by. Big gallop out from him as well. Covers the ground very nicely as he prepares here for the sprint. Brought to you by Twin Spires. American Pastime, a son of Tapazar. There's a live look right now at Del Mar. All seems quiet on the western front. The fog rolled in mid-morning here and has stayed with us throughout the remaining training hours. The temperature is starting to rise, though, so that is definitely a good thing. It got pretty chilly out here for quite a while. Just remember, you can check us out here every morning leading up to the Breeders' Cup on breederscup.com. You can also follow along on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I will be here doing the works until Sunday, and then starting Monday, it's breakfast with the works. So expanded coverage here, but we will be catching all of the workers and as many gallopers as we can to keep you fully informed leading up to the 34th annual Breeders' Cup World Championship.